Hello friends, welcome to Health Not Outing. Today we're going to be working on making some cabbage chips. Cabbage chips are something that my family actually really enjoys, but not only for the flavor of them, which is delicious, but also because cabbage contains a very high amount of calcium. And calcium is something that a lot of growing children really need, and they don't really get in today's typical diet. So I like to actually make these chips up and give them to my children as snacks instead of giving them a lot of the other less healthy options. I do use a little bit of oil in this recipe, but not a lot, and you could technically omit that if you would prefer to be oil free. So let's get started. With everything that I do try to be very intentional. I purchase purple red cabbage instead of just the regular green cabbage, because it does have a few additional vitamins and minerals in it that the green cabbage just doesn't have. Both are absolutely delicious, and if you only have the one, then that's perfectly fine. But all I'm going to do is literally just tear it off. Now, I do like to flatten the pieces out so that they will actually hold all of this stuff better. And this is my bowl. Just ignore the stuff in the bottom. I just did a batch just a few minutes ago, and I'm going to use the same bowl because there's still some yummy goodness in the bottom of it. And all we're going to do is just tear this off into pieces. Now remember, we're going to dehydrate this, so they are going to shrink up a good bit, so don't worry about that. And I do like to see these really thick pieces. They do not dehydrate well. They take forever, and they're very, very chewy. So I actually use those for other things, such as stir fries and such. But I don't actually dehydrate them for these chips. And I just take any of these ruffled corners and I kind of just flatten them out. Again, this does not have to be anything perfect. We do like to keep it as even as possible so that you can actually enjoy the chip. But it's going to shrink up substantially in the dehydrator, so there's really no need to worry about that. And just kind of tear these up into bite-sized pieces. I usually will fill my dehydrator up, and I have a 8-tray dehydrator, and so I can put quite a lot of these. Usually I can use this entire head up. And once I've got that all done, then I'll show you the seasonings and everything that we're going to be putting on top. This is a great way to use up any cabbage that you've got in the refrigerator that you just really need to get rid of. It's also fantastic, I have learned, for small children who seem to get really hyper. Oftentimes I have personally seen that when my 2-year-old starts getting really, really hyper or starts getting a bit whiny for no obvious reason that I can see, then it's usually, in my experience, been on account of the fact that they are low in calcium. And not the kind that you're going to buy from the store, because that doesn't absorb as well. Dietary calcium actually absorbs much, much better in the system than anything that you could ever buy in the form of a pill. And so this is one of the higher calcium items. And if your children are really just averse to to cabbage flavor, you could use kale or anything that's really going to hold a good solid leaf. I don't know. I would try using something like iceberg, simply because there's not really a lot of vitamins and minerals in iceberg lettuce, and you would be kind of just wasting your time. Again, I like to be very intentional in the food that I feed my children, but I notice even for myself during certain times of the month that I crave a lot of extra calcium, and these are fantastic for that. Also during really stressful events. I don't know if you know, but my family is military, and so when we are coming up on a military move like we are in the next couple of months, then I also like to load myself up on as much dietary calcium as I can, because that helps to just calm things. It doesn't make the event any less stressful, but it lets my entire body be able to better, I guess, adjust to all of the stresses that are going to come, and that's really helpful. Plus, again, these just taste delicious, so sometimes when you're craving a salty snack, these are perfect. And it's much better than going to a bag of, you know, potato chips or crackers or something like that. These are going to be really helpful and delicious. And again, I save these parts here. I'll oftentimes chop them up because they're the thicker parts and they're super crunchy. And then I'll just saute them up on the stove and put them over top of some rice with a little bit of soy sauce or sriracha, whatever your favorite seasoning. And that makes a delicious, and again, very rich calcium and other minerals, dinner, dessert, whatever you'd like. And then you could do the same thing with kale. Personally, I prefer cabbage, but that's just a personal taste. I do enjoy kale, but I just find this is easier. It also lasts forever in the refrigerator. So for people who are super busy and just don't have time right away to break this all up, it's okay if you leave it in the refrigerator for a month. As long as you don't see any kind of mold growing on it or the leaves aren't super wilty, then generally speaking, no worries. So as I mentioned earlier, I actually already have some of this going in the dehydrator at the moment. So I'm not actually going to use this whole thing up just yet. I want to actually use those shelves for a couple of other things. So what I'm going to do is show you how we actually season this up. And it's very simple seasonings. I like to use nutritional yeast. And I know there are some other forms of this that you can probably find that are a little bit better for you. I've heard that the type that are non-fortified actually might be a little bit better, but for now, this is what I have. We try to do everything on as much of a budget as we can, and these fit our budget at the moment. I like using this. Now, adobo is just a seasoning salt, so whatever you have that is your favorite seasoning salt, you could just use plain salt. This has a little bit of garlic and a little bit of turmeric, black pepper, and a very small bit of oregano. So I do actually like to use this just because I have it, it's inexpensive, and it adds a really nice flavor. So basically what you're gonna use is just plain olive oil, you know, the best that you can afford at the time. And you're just gonna give it a very light drizzle, almost out. And then once you've got that over there, you're just gonna gently massage this in. And the idea here is that we're gonna try and get it onto every leaf. Now I do have some of the mixture down at the bottom, so I'm going to end up seeing some of it on this as I'm going, but that's okay. We're just going to try and get this onto every leaf. I'm not being rough with them. I don't really want to break up the membranes because they'll add a nice crunch if you leave them full. But just to make sure that every one of those flat surfaces gets a little bit of oil, but not too much. And again, if it folds over, then you try and flatten those pieces out as much as you can. See, you just kind of go through it. And here, I don't have a whole big recipe. This is kind of where I just do things on my own. I use recipes for a lot of things, but very frequently I kind of use them as guidelines. It's just the way that I cook. I go by smell, and I go by taste, and I go by sight. All right, and then we're gonna just take a little bit of adobo. And here again, because I haven't measured exactly how much is in this, I'm just kind of going to guesstimate. So we're gonna just do a very light coat over the top. And this is also to your taste. I go a bit more liberal with my nutritional yeast. This adds a nice cheesy flavor. And then I just kind of shake it and toss it, which means I have more mess to clean up later, but that's all right too. And we're just gonna kind of shake the coat. And you just wanna have it like coating all of it. And then what I usually do, because my measurements are never the same, is I take a little piece and use a little bit more adobo. Basically what I'm going for is just enough flavor that the main taste is not just cabbage. We want to taste the nutritional yeast. We want to taste the adobo, and we also want to taste a little bit of cabbage. My kids aren't the biggest fans of the flavor of cabbage, and so that's why I kind of tend to get it all over me. I tend to try and hide it a little bit. Perfect. And then we're simply going to move all of our stuff out of the way here and get our trays. Okay, we have our trays. And what we're going to end up doing is we're just going to lay these out flat. Now, if you do not have a dehydrator, you can do this in the oven. I have personally not done it, but I have heard a lot of people, you can turn it down on like the lowest setting. If you have convection, that's even better. But put it down on one of your lowest settings for probably, I would probably check it after 4 hours. As for your dehydrator, I like to put mine on to make them extra crispy. I tend to dehydrate these suckers probably about 20 to 24 hours because you have big chunks like this guy. And when you have the bigger chunks, they tend to take a lot longer to dry. And I want these to be extra crispy. And when they get finished, they are more like potato chips in their texture. And they are absolutely delightful to munch on. They go really good with a sandwich or something like that. Or when my kids are saying, "Mom, I'm hungry," then I can pull these out. And I don't feel guilty about giving them something like a chip to snack on. Because yes, it's like a chip, but it's not a chip, it's healthy. I like being able to add in extra vitamins and minerals in every location that I can when it comes to their food. My children have a lot of food allergies, so a lot of times we can't just go out and grab your typical snack and have that like I grew up with. So I had to learn a whole nother way of cooking, and this was one of the first ones that I learned, and it works really well at helping to give a boost of calcium to the body, and it also helps to kind of save that salty taste and craving that everybody likes to have now and then. Sometimes I'll even add a little pinch of cayenne to this mixture if I know it's going to be something that's more for me and my husband. Obviously my kids don't really care for it, but I like to add it with mine. There's also different things that you can put in it if you wanted to go a little bit fancier, but it's going to take longer to dry. If you wanted to do something like some sriracha in it, again, that's going to take you a bit longer to dry, and you're going to have to account for that. And I really wouldn't recommend it for kids unless your kids are just really into spicy things. But you could add a little bit of extra stuff. Now, the great part is here at the end, when you have all this extra leftover stuff, then you can kind of just put it on here like this. And I like to keep one over the top of the other because then I'm sprinkling it on both. And that way, nothing is going to waste. And if by some chance you end up with a lot extra, you can just put it in an airtight jar and use it within a couple of days as seasonings for on top of your noodles, on top of your rice. Honestly, whatever you would like to season up, this stuff is just delightful. I've actually thought about keeping it in a jar just as itself. Because of the seasoning, salt has a little bit of garlic. It's kind of like a Parmesan, a vegan Parmesan type flavor. But again, you can customize the amount of salt that you like and the amount of extra flavor. And then we just put these in the dehydrator. And really, that's all there is to it. I'll check them throughout the day and kind of poke at them. And when I notice that the thicker parts are completely crispy, that's when I'll go ahead and take them out. but sometimes I leave them for a little bit longer and it doesn't hurt anything. It just makes them nice and crunchy. If you do if yours turns off automatically and you don't catch them fast enough, they will start to gain the moisture back from the environment. And so all you have to do at that point is just go ahead and turn them back on the dehydrator for about another hour or two, and they'll dry right back out. You'll want to eat these here pretty quickly. I usually try to have them gone within a week because they are still going to have some moisture in them. So there's something that you want to plan. You can plan them ahead for the week, and then I wouldn't keep them too much longer unless you had a good desiccant or oxygen absorber kind of thing that you're putting in with them. Then they might last you a little bit longer. But like anything, use your discretion. One of the things that I mentioned I like to do with this after I've gotten it actually put into the dehydrator, I've got these extra big scrap pieces that are left over, and this much isn't really enough that I can do anything with tonight for dinner or anything like that. But what I can do is I can go ahead and I can chop these guys up, and then I can put them into the freezer. And by putting them into the freezer, I'll have some already chopped up and ready to go the next time I want to do some type of a stir fry or something like that. And they'll be ready for me to go. And that way, I'm not actually just wasting anything. If I had a more stable, compostable area, then I would actually probably just put these guys into the compost bin so that at least they're not getting wasted. And that's only if I'm not going to actually use them for cooking. But for today, I'm going to be putting them in here. And I know Ziploc bags are plastic, and I try to avoid plastic where I can. But you know, you use with what you have, and this is what I have right now. So we are going to use a freezer bag, and we will save this and use it later. And hopefully, if I get enough, I'll be able to make a very nice and delicious dinner that's very healthy and full of nutrients and vitamins for my family. And this is what these little suckers look like the next day. As you can see, we're down to 2 trays because the children found them this morning and they have been devoured, which is a good thing, I guess. It means that they absolutely love them. It's a little warm. Yep, and see? Also super messy, but they turn into these nice little crunchy crisps, and they are delicious. I hope that this is something that you have found informative and that you and your family can use to live your best life. So thank you very much for watching my tutorial on how to make some delicious cabbage chips for you and your family. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and a like, and subscribe if you would like to see more videos similarly to this.